On today's episode of the McCann Dogs podcast,
I'm choking up a little bit here. He just suddenly stopped and screamed. He laid down and he started trembling. The stress is still in my body.
and now instructors Shannon and Swanny.
I have some other sad news.
What is it?
Well, what we're talking about today, what's actually really heavily on my mind, is my most recent experience, which I would say was a medical crisis with Ned, my 6.5-year-old Nova Scotia duck tolling retriever. So I thought it would be a good opportunity to sort of unpack what happened, talk about all of the things that I was grateful for surrounding that, some of the things that I learned as takeaways from that, and I'm going to say right off the bat, Ned is happily alive and well and recovered completely and all is good.
He's like a bad penny. He keeps coming back. No, I love Ned. I love Ned.
He's so adorable. And he's the color of a penny.
He is the color of a penny.
Maybe a little richer red, but
yes.
At any rate. So Ned was happily intact. He had not been neutered yet, and that was on purpose by design. He is... he's my fourth male toller, and I think I have having the intact males down to a good little art and science now, although sometimes there's still some struggles and there's some things that I know that I'm going to need to work through with my males that I tend to keep intact. So I usually have a pretty good running list of skills to teach and activities and whatnot. I keep my dogs intact for a variety of reasons. One, we actually did a whole episode on spaying and neutering and the benefits that we've seen and the detriments that we've seen, and sort of we tried to be as unbiased as possible in presenting our experience with our dogs, with students' dogs, with behavioral problems, everything that sort of comes with having a dog who has lots of testosterone flowing through, or a female who still comes into estrus every 9 months or so. It was a really interesting episode.
It was very good.
Yeah,
yes.
Swanny, myself, and Jan sat down and had a really, really good chat about that. So if you're thinking about whether or not you should neuter or whether or not you should spay your dog, and you're on the fence and you're not sure and you'd like to just hear some more information, check out that episode of the McCann Dogs podcast. I think that it was a really good one. It was a great chat with Jan. So I keep my dogs intact for a variety of reasons. One of them is that I want to make sure that the breeder that brought them into this world, should they wish to, can use them in their breeding program. So I always say in my contracts that I will keep them intact unless it becomes a problem for whatever reason. I want to make sure that the dog that I'm living with is easy for me to live with.
Right.
So if suddenly he becomes so over the top with his hormones and testosterone that it is making my life unhappy, then I want to have the option of neutering. And in this case, there was a health issue that came up and forced the neuter. So
you had to quickly make a decision.
Yeah, absolutely. Have you ever found yourself in that position with a spay or a neuter?
To quickly make a decision?
Yeah.
Yes. Atari, my Sheltie, was spayed, and she had what they thought possibly was maybe a little bit of pus or fluid coming from her vaginal area.
Okay.
And they said...
like a vaginitis or...
Well, they weren't 100% sure, and they thought, you know what, let's get this uterus out very quickly. Now, they didn't do it, I think it was like the next day or the day after that, so, and they were a little bit worried of a uterine infection of some sort.
Okay.
So we, it turned out there wasn't. They were perplexed where that was coming from, but I had planned to spay her anyways, so it was not a big deal, but I did have to make the decision, rather quickly to get that done. But that was fine with me.
Okay. It was an easy decision for you to make then at that point. And I'll say, when we were in the crisis, it was an easy decision for me to make on Ned's behalf as well. In the aftermath, there is a little bit of, I don't want to say disappointment, because the overwhelming feeling is gratitude that he's still here and healthy and now he's recovered and I'm out of this crisis. But there's also a couple of disappointments that come along with it. One is that I had to email his breeder and say, unfortunately, he's in for an emergency neuter right now, and of course there's no time to collect. So had I thought beforehand about collecting him so that there could still be some.
What do you mean by collecting him?
Oh,
Because
you know
some
what?
people might wonder what that means.
That's a really good question, and I'm glad you said that. So collecting basically means taking sperm from the dog, and they will take the sperm and freeze the sperm and keep it for future generations. So right now in the Toller sperm bank, which isn't an actual thing, but you know, where there are Toller sperm being kept, like there's a lot of breeders that have these old lines of Tollers that we could never access without that frozen sperm. But the fact that they thought to collect from the dog, which is the term that I was using, the fact that those breeders thought to collect from the dog means that we still have these great dogs from days past that we can still bring into our breeding program.
Right, yes.
So I was a little bit disappointed. I am a little bit disappointed now at this point that there won't be any Ned puppies out there, which is okay because, you know, his lines are still alive and well, but it would have been nice to have that option because he's got a lot of really
He's
great
a
qualities.
really good dog.
Lovely, lovely boy. I just adore that boy. And also it means that now I can't play in conformation anymore. Well, I could. There's an altered class at specialties and things like that, but it's not the same. Like it's very much different level of competition. And Ned actually took an award of merit at the most recent national specialty about a year and a half ago now. And I don't show a ton with him anymore, but he got his championship when he was young. But I really would have liked to continue to be able to dust him off for specialties and take him out and show him for the big events. So,
and just to clarify too, dog conformation shows or beauty shows, they are supposed to be an exhibition of breeding stock. So dogs are required to be not spayed and not neutered. However, other dog type shows like obedience competitions, flyball, agility, dogs can be neutered or spayed. So conformation is the only one where they ask dogs to be left intact.
Yes. And at specialties and things like that, when they have extra classes that they add to the event, they will have an altered class where altered males can compete against other altered males. So I probably will still play in that because it'll still be fun.
Right, yes.
But it's different than being in the big show and going up against all of the other, you know, specials that have completed their championships, etc. So a little bit disappointed that we won't be able to play in that anymore. But again, it's a pittance compared to how grateful I feel that all is well and he's healthy. So I'll get over that disappointment very, very quickly. And of course, I'll have other confirmation dogs to play with.
And so many other venues to perform in too.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll go over a little bit of what happened. So basically, things were great. Everything was wonderful. I actually had been into the vet clinic about 2 weeks prior to this to do just my annual checkup. So he got a rabies vaccination because he was due for that after 3 years. I did blood work, which I like to do every year. I like to make sure that I have a good look at my dog's blood values. Everything is within normal range. And it also gives me a baseline because some dogs will present a higher or lower range in some areas. I'm sure you're really familiar with this. And it tells me if there's something that Ned is going to present in his blood work that's a little bit different than what I would expect, I have that information as a baseline. So if then he does present sick and I need to take blood work at that point, I have something to compare the sick blood work to. I have this baseline of his normal blood work and we can say, oh yeah, you know what, his creatine levels are usually a little bit high. So I'm not going to pay too much attention to that. That's not contributing to whatever the problem is that I'm having to deal with. So I was really glad to have that. I had taken in a stool sample and I had taken him in for the rabies vaccination and blood work. So I had some really good information on him from, you know, last year, this year, you know, a couple of weeks ago. And I like to have that information. It's so great. And in hindsight, one of the things that I learned from this episode is that I am going to add urinalysis as one of my yearly things to analyze as well, because had I done that, I probably would have seen that something was off.
Right.
I probably would have been able to treat that thing that was off. And then I might have had the opportunity to continue to keep him intact or at least to have the time to collect and then decide on neutering.
Right.
So basically what happened, everything was great. We were, it was a Sunday. We actually did some field training. And
emergencies always happen on the weekend.
Isn't that the
yes.
truth?
If there's an emergency, it's guaranteed to happen on the weekend.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So we had done some field training. He was fine. He was energetic. Like he was happy, doing great with his work. There was no issue there. We finished field training and I thought, I'm going to throw a few bumpers for him and burn off some of the steam that's still left in him. So I threw some happy bumpers and we just played and hung out a little bit. And then I thought, okay, that's enough running. I'm going to go for a walk. And I'm on 12 acres. So I have a little bit of a path to hike and really enjoy my 12 acres. We spend lots of time wandering around on there. So we went for a little walk on the property, and about 10 minutes into it, he just suddenly stopped and screamed. And I thought, I felt alarmed. I looked at him, and my first reaction was he stepped on a hornet.
Right.
So, and Ned is not usually an overly dramatic dog, but that would be a sudden shock and whatever. It would be understandable for him to vocalize
or even a thorn, possibly.
Yeah,
yes.
absolutely. Yeah. So my first reaction is always after I catch that lump in my throat from hearing the dog scream, that noise that you just don't ever unhear. After catching that moment and, resisting the urge to fly at him screaming, "What's wrong?" and panic him even more, I just watched him, and he wasn't indicating where the problem was. If they twist a leg or something like that, or if he had stepped on a hornet and screamed, I would have expected him to be licking at his paw or biting at his paw or doing something that that gave me a little bit of a clue of what was going on. But he didn't. He just stood there. He was just standing there looking at me. And so I kept watching him for a bit, and he didn't give me any other indication. So I thought, okay, well, hopefully it's a passing moment, and whatever it was, he didn't look overly put off. So I said, okay, let's go, buddy. And off we went again. And I was watching him move and looking for any signs of lameness. So this is my second reaction. Right. As soon as I get over okay, I'm not sure what really just happened, now I'm analyzing gait. So this is a really good quality to be able to have. It's a really good skill to be able to have, is to look at your dog and watch them move and see if you can see any unevenness. Yes. Because it will tell you a lot. Yes. It'll tell you a lot about what's going on. If it was a muscle issue, if it was just like he had pulled something, I would be able to see that in his gait. So I'd see in some unevenness, and I couldn't for the life of me see any unevenness, but he seemed generally stiff. So I thought, okay, well, I'm not seeing anything. He doesn't look right, but he doesn't look really wrong either. So it was probably about 5 p.m. at this point, and I thought, you know what? I'm just going to keep an eye on him. We'll bring him in the house. We'll hang out, and I'll see what continues to evolve. Right, yes. So at that point, he was still pooping. No problem. He had an evening poop. He was still peeing. No problem. Yeah. He loves to pee. He was an intact male, and he would lift his leg a million times a minute. And, it was very rare that he would have a really long stream anyways, because he liked to save enough to mark as much as possible. Right. So nothing was unusual for that. He was still lifting his leg. He was still peeing. He was still eating. He ate his dinner.
And drinking water.
He was still drinking. Yep. There was no vomiting. There was no diarrhea. Some of these things are good indications. We actually have a really awesome YouTube video. Have you seen this one with Dr. Paula?
Yes. I think I've posted it on our we have a McCann free training tips Facebook group that everyone is welcome to join. Yeah. McCann Dogs free training tips.
Perfect.
Yes, so I posted on there.
We actually have 2 videos with Dr. Paula, but the most recent one was about emergencies. Do you know the one I'm talking about?
Oh, I don't know if I've yeah, I know the one you're talking about. Yes, I haven't posted that one yet.
It's a really fabulous video. So basically, Dr. Paula goes over some details about when it's an emergency. Yes. What are the things that you should look for if your dog is not able to poop, if they're really distended, if they're vomiting repeatedly, if this, if that.
If their gums are pale. That's another one. I remember when one of my dogs, a Cowboy, was in dire straits, and it was, her last day. I remember looking at her gums, lifting up her gums, and they were gray. Like they had lost their pink color.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. So this video is so very informative. Have a look at that on our YouTube channel, McCann Dogs on YouTube. And that video is great for talking through what's an emergency, what things should you watch for to say, okay, I'm calling the emergency vet, or I'm going to wait and see what this is. Right. So I was still in a wait and see mode because he wasn't presenting anything that was extremely alarming to me. Yes. And of course, I don't want to be, you know, that helicopter parent that goes running into the vet because their child stubbed, or goes running into the doctor because their child stubbed their toe, sort of thing. So, and I have enough experience that I'm fairly confident at this point that I can recognize if something is really critical. So,
and we live in an area too where there's quick access to vets too. Yes. You know, if you're really isolated, you might have to, you know, call or think a little bit more. But we're very blessed in our area.
Well, and interestingly enough that you mentioned that, we just did an episode on moving and how you can make that less stressful for your dogs. But in that episode, we talked about making sure that you find your vet clinic early. Yes. And I'm so glad that I already had all that worked out because that wasn't even part of the stress in my mind for me. I had already found the vet clinic, visited the vet clinic, gotten the blood work, gotten them started, gotten an account set up.
Knew exactly how to drive there.
Yeah, transferred old vet information from my previous vet to my new vet. That was all there. So I was really grateful that I took our advice on that and had all that
in place. Yes.
So basically that evening I just thought, okay, I'm going to wait and see. I'm just going to monitor him and, you know, maybe he just stepped on something and twisted something and we'll see how he is in the morning.
Or he could have like bit his tongue or like anything. Yeah.
Yeah. That would have been a good one because that would have been one that he probably wouldn't have shown any signs of specifics. It would have just presented as like, generalized pain because unless you really saw him, saw the blood coming out of his mouth or something like that. But yeah, something like that. So I still had this gut feeling, though, that he just wasn't right. Like, it just felt like he wasn't right. And I've learned to trust my instincts and trust my gut. And so I was very up and down the whole night watching him and just making sure he was still comfortable. I was sleeping very lightly, listening for him to move at all. And he slept soundly the whole night. He was out like a light and all was good. So I thought, okay, we're good. So the morning came. I took him outside. He had a pee. He had a poo. So again, very normal things. And he seemed to be moving much more loosely. And I thought, okay, you know what? He's feeling better this morning. Whew. Okay, all's good. It's Monday morning now. I can go to work and not worry about it.
And emergencies are over now because it's no longer the weekend.
Yeah, exactly. So I fed him his breakfast and he ate his breakfast seemingly happily. And then as soon as he finished his breakfast, he laid down and he started trembling.
Oh.
And I thought, no more wait and see. Okay, we're going. Yeah. So I called my vet right away and I'm choking up a little bit here because the stress is still in my body. So I called my vet right away and they are actually an emergency clinic as well, which is one of the reasons that I chose them because I love being able to access all the diagnostics I need in one place. They're going to have the state of the art, everything, you know, I'm never going to have to worry about being sent to for specific understanding in veterinary care, I might end up going to a specialized clinic. But for the most part, they're going to be able to do all the diagnostic stuff in-house.
Yes. So, and they're 24 hours. They have somebody to watch him overnight if he needs to stay overnight.
Exactly. So I called them and they were actually able to get me in for 9:30 for an appointment. So that was about an hour and a half away, which I already had a half an hour drive. So I thought, you know what? Yep, I'll take it. So we went in and I had been poking and prodding him just to see if I could sort of figure stuff out. And when you're looking for a pain response, a lot of the times dogs are incredibly stoic.
Very stoic.
So, I mean, this is a deeply ingrained instinct. So talk about why they're so stoic. What happens to a dog that shows pain?
Well, an animal in the wild that shows pain is often a target for other animals of other species or even their own species. So dogs, have evolved, thousands and thousands and thousands of years, but those genetics are still there to hide pain, be stoic, don't show weakness.
Yeah, they truly, truly are. And that showed with Ned. So when you're looking for any sort of a pain response with dogs, the dogs that aren't incredibly dramatic, for lack of a better word. And I say that jokingly because Reggie was a very dramatic dog. Yeah. If I even approached him the wrong way with something, he would scream. It was just his way of his way of being stoic and warding off people. He just kept being confused all the time that he was always in pain. So it just generalized.
And the scream drove people away.
It's so funny.
Yes.
But yeah, so Ned is incredibly the opposite, very stoic. And I was looking for pupil dilation because that sometimes is the only way you can tell with a super stoic dog.
Yes.
And
or increased breathing too.
Yes.
Like a breathing rate that goes
Panting,
suddenly a little bit
stress.
faster. You can see too. Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So I was looking for any of those signs and I really didn't get any from him. So I thought that was Sunday night. And I thought, okay, well, we're all good then. I need to stop being so worried about this. He's moving, he's eating, he's peeing, he's drinking, he's doing all the things. So then the Monday morning came and whatnot. So when we went into the vet clinic, I was thinking at that point, I was worried about a disc issue just because it presented so generally and there is some disc issues in the breed. So I was a little bit worried. I was a lot worried about that, actually, I should say. I won't sugarcoat it. I was incredibly stressed that because he wasn't showing anything specific that maybe that this was the start of a degeneration of a disc. So anyways, we got into the clinic and as soon as the vet went to touch him, and this is a really interesting thing because with me, we have spent so much time working, handling, and establishing trust. We've worked so hard on training. He very clearly knows that he has to defer to me with these things. He knows that I have his best interest at heart. He knows that I need to be able to handle. I've put in the work. I've put in the time. I've put in the effort. I've let him know that there's also a you must component of this because if he has an ear infection, if he has a tummy ache, if he has anything that needs treating, in those moments, they might be painful. And I'll tell you, he was in pain. And he was fine with me handling him, and he was fine with the vet handling him as well. But as soon as the vet went to reach over and palpate his belly, he screamed at that point.
Yes.
And I thought, oh my goodness, like, again, that noise you can't unhear. Like it sent chills up my spine just there, just thinking about it. It's such an intense feeling in that moment. And I thought, okay, it's not a disc. It's something in his, like there's pressure in his belly. So the vet at that point, immediately backed off, of course, because she recognized too that he was in pain and, suggested an x-ray, which of course I said right away, like, yes, please, let's do it. So the x-ray showed his prostate was about the size of a peach. And normally with a healthy dog, you really won't even see the prostate on an exam. Like you have to look hard to see it because it's not very large.
That's big. Like
that is big.
Yeah. Considering Ned's size, like this a peach is a big thing to have in him.
Yes. This is a 45-pound dog.
Yeah.
So then as well, his bladder was about the size of, those small watermelons? Not a huge watermelon, but the round.
A personal watermelon.
Is that what it is?
They call them personal watermelons.
You're kidding. I didn't know that. No, that's hilarious.
They call them personal watermelons.
I didn't know that.
I know that because I like stuff like that.
Yeah. So his bladder was about the size of a small watermelon.
No, personal. Sorry. A personal watermelon.
A personal watermelon.
But not as delicious.
And he was actually also full of poop, even though he was pooping normally. So he was just packed to his limit.
Right.
So they're not sure if there was some crystal involvement there and that's what caused the scream, or if it was just that he was so full and maybe as he was moving, he just hit a like a divot.
Yeah.
And that just gave him some feelings of pain. I will tell you for a fact, there's no way this happened overnight.
Right.
This had been brewing for a while. So one of my takeaways here with Ned is that he showed me no signs of this, none whatsoever.
Right.
So there's absolutely no way that I will lapse on making sure I get his yearly blood work. Now, live and learn. This is one of my takeaways from this is that I am also adding urinalysis every year to make sure that I can see those values are normal, and I know that there's not going to be any sort of disastrous medical emergency. Well,
right. Yes.
As much as you can possibly know that. Now that I've said that, I need to knock on wood. Oh my goodness.
I had a dog that showed great stoicism too. I had a dog that was 2. She raced in a flyball tournament on Saturday, and her times were a bit slower than normal, like just tenths of a second.
Yeah.
And we ended up euthanizing her on the Thursday with cancer. Oh. There was nothing we could do. She was only 2 years old. And she, I think
remember this.
I just couldn't believe that she could hide it from us It was really on the Monday that, other than she was a little bit slower on the Saturday in her times, but on Monday I said, something's wrong with this dog. And by Thursday it was, apparently she was full of cancer. So
oh my gosh.
they are incredibly stoic in hiding pain.
Yeah, they definitely are.
Not all. Honda would scream if one of his hairs blew the wrong way. But other
Reggie
dogs,
too.
other dogs, can be so stoic.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. I'm so sorry you lost a dog at 2. That's so devastating.
Yes,
It really is.
It's very, very difficult. Yes.
So one of the points that I wanted to make here was if there is a sudden change, and you can't always tell, you don't always know, but if there is a sudden change in your dog's behavior, like there was with Ned on the Sunday, and it just seemed odd. I was trusting my gut, and I didn't wait that long because by the next morning it was, okay, something is really wrong here.
Yes.
Like that trembling that was happening was clearly pain and clearly extreme pain for him. If he had gotten up to that point without doing anything to show that he was in pain and then suddenly he's trembling, like that's... So obviously, this did not happen overnight.
Right.
There was a lot leading up to this, but there was no sign of that.
No.
Like that's the frustrating part with it. So if you start to see sudden mood shifts with your dog, if you start to see that they're suddenly more reclusive, a lot of the times dogs in pain will start to isolate themselves.
Yes.
So you'll notice that where they were usually with you in the living room, you're having a hard time finding them. Right. So when things like that happen, it's good to get in for a checkup with the vet. Trust your gut. If you think something is off or wrong, trust your gut, get into the vet, do some simple diagnostics. Like it will be so worthwhile if you find something early enough to prevent the pain from continuing and to prevent the pain from getting to the point where it got with Ned. And like, I have been racking my brain going back over the last few months and trying to see any sort of connection, anything that felt off, anything that was weird. And there's just nothing that I can come up with.
Right.
And I mean, we know our dogs so well. We spend a lot of time with them. We spend a lot of time training and teaching and communicating with them. So I'm confident that there isn't anything that I could have noticed there, but I'm analyzing. And I'm not just analyzing so that I can kick myself for missing this, that, and the other. I'm analyzing so that I can recognize next time.
Right.
If
And
there
help
are
others
other
to
signs.
recognize.
Exactly.
Yes.
I will often suggest to people when they have their puppies, when they start teething, watch what they do. And puppies are quite a bit different than adult dogs. They can actually be much more dramatic about pain when they're still puppies because they don't have that understanding of the instinct and the self-regulation and whatnot. But it still will give you a little bit of a sign. And this is going to sound awful, I remember Tyler, when he was about 8 months old, he was running down the hallway at the cottage and he ran into a doorway and he hit his shoulder and he screamed and he was sore and a little bit put off, and I rushed him into the vet, and the vet was it was an old cottage country vet, and he, I'm sure, had been around in the industry for a million years and had seen everything, and he looked at me and he literally rolled his eyes at me when I rushed in with my poor little Tyler, who was fine. But he literally, this is going back a ways, so this is the drama that kept me from rushing to the vet clinic on a Sunday night. But he looked at me and he actually rolled his eyes and he said, "He's fine. I'm not even going to charge you anything.
Oh,
he's fine."
Well, that was nice of him. Yes.
It was nice of him. But I was like, but are you sure? You can charge me whatever you want. I really want to make sure he's fine. The eye roll kind of threw me off. But again, I was young. He's fine. Okay, I'll trust you then. You know what you're saying. Right. But I remember thinking now I know with this dog, I know that he is going to present fairly dramatically.
Right.
His pain response was this very shut down Tyler. And basically he just spent all this time until I was probably bruised or something like that. And it was his first experience with pain, which often they blow it way out of proportion as well. They don't know how to deal with it. So they just sort of shut down. But shut down Tyler was very different than regular Tyler. Yeah, I'm sure you remember Tyler.
Yes.
He was a bounce off the walls type of guy. He was hyper vigilant, would notice notice everything, would react to everything. I actually worked really hard with that dog on reactivity. Really, really hard. He was a great dog, but he was a lot of work with that. And so for him to just be sitting there staring and not responding at all, that was really good for me to know, because anytime that would happen throughout his life, right away I was trying to make connections with, okay, what's wrong? What's going on? What's happening? So if you have that opportunity, and as awful as it sounds, if you have that opportunity to observe your dogs when they're in pain, make note of what they're doing, because that will give you good information for the future. It truly, truly will.
Yes.
So the stoic nature of the dog, it can be such a hard thing.
And watch for bathroom habit changes too.
Yes.
Dogs, especially female dogs, can be very susceptible to urinary tract infections. And I remember one time Atari suddenly just peed in the house, and I thought, that is really weird.
Yeah.
And it was on a Sunday, of course.
Of course.
But we went, I thought this is odd. And then as I was cleaning it up on the paper towel, I saw a little tinge of red. So I thought, oh, it must be a urinary tract infection. So off to the vet clinic we went. But you never know. It was just it happened once. It never happened again. But, and I didn't want her to suffer with that.
Yeah. Absolutely. 100%. So the other takeaways from this are not anything that was surprising to me. So my other big takeaway, I'm so grateful that previous Shannon found the idea of handling and doing lots of handling work to be such a crucial component with my dog.
And also crates.
Yes. Well, yeah. And that's a big part as well. I definitely want to talk about that. The handling thing is such an important element. And when we talk about handling, we're not just talking about general petting. We're not just talking about being able to touch your dog and, pick up their paw and things like that. We're talking about teaching your dog to be still while you examine and while you do whatever it is you need to do to keep them healthy. And this is where there's a huge element of trust. So a huge element of taking the time to go through the processes and build the understanding that me touching you is something that, first off, is not an option. So there's this idea that has floated around the internet for a while about asking dogs for consent to handle them. And while this is a really nice idea, of course, you know what? If I want to come over there and touch your arm for some reason and you don't like that, then that's not fair to you. So me asking for consent to touch your arm would be a fair thing with a human.
Right.
But with a child, with a dog, with any sort of situation where we are responsible for taking care of this creature, what would you say if somebody said to you that you should have had consent from your son to be able to give him vaccinations or take him to the doctor for a medical exam?
When he was little, there would have been never any consent to that.
Absolutely.
He would have said, no, I do not want to get a shot. I do not want to get my temperature taken. None of those things.
Absolutely.
Yes. So being his mom and a responsible adult, it's like, I know, Ty, none of us like these things, but we have to get them done.
Yeah, absolutely. Did you have conversations with him about that? Do you remember ever having...
I think we probably did. Yes, I think we probably talked about how, I know it's not fun going to the dentist and having your mouth looked at, but we have to do this. We just
important for your health.
We just have to do this. And
so the way we have those conversations with dogs is we condition them. We spend time teaching them how to be accepting of handling, how to be still while we're handling. We use grooming tools. We use medical tools to, help get them used to the idea that, I shouldn't say we use medical tools, but we use simulated medical tools. So for example, I would use a spoon to simulate the vet looking into my dog's ear. So when I've got a young puppy, I always have spoons when I'm doing handling work, because that seems like a stethoscope. It seems like a whatever the things are called that they would look into.
Is it an otitis? No, I know, I can see it, but I can't remember what it is.
That's okay.
I don't know.
I thought you were going to come up with
No, I don't know.
Swanny spent some time working at an emergency veterinary clinic, so she probably has.
We would probably just call it the ear thingy.
The ear thingy.
Grab me the ear thingy.
Hey, now we know. That's what it's actually called.
The ear thingy.
Did you know that?
No, I didn't. Well, Honda was at the vet the other day for a checkup, and he had to get his temperature taken. And there's no way anyone gives consent to get their temperature taken in the way that they take dogs' temperatures. And you could see Honda's little eyes go, ooh, but he stood there.
This is so important. And add to that the animal is stressed, right? The animal is stressed. The animal is in pain. There's no chance in those moments they're giving consent.
Right.
They need to know that it's not optional.
Yes.
And we do that with all sorts of kindness and love and teaching and conditioning. Like I spend when I have a puppy, I work on nail trimming stuff every single day. And that doesn't mean I trim nails every single day, but that means that I take time
Let me
to
see your nails, Shannon. Let me see yours.
They're long. You know that Sam Simon picture from The Simpsons where he's
yes.
naked and typing?
Yes.
That's what my toenail. No, not really. They're well manicured. Pedicured? Well pedicured. So I want to make sure that my dog understands I can medicate you. You know, if you have an ear infection, you're in pain, you're stressed, you're not going to give me consent because the nature of the animal is to say, no, don't hurt me more.
Right.
You know, they're going to do what they need to do to protect themselves unless they've been conditioned to understand differently. So I will do things like take a little bottle with some liquid in it, for example, and I screw the cap on really tight, so there's no liquid actually coming out, but I will work on opening up the ear and then just shaking the bottle gently beside the ear, and I and reward the dog for being calm with that. And then I'll work on just gently pressing it in the ear. So it would simulate the idea that sometime later on down the road, I might need to clean your ears or give you medicine for your ears or whatever the case may be. And you need to be chill with that because I've got your best interest at heart. I promise you, I'm not going to cause you any pain that unless, you know, if it comes along as a little bit of a side note from having to medicate with an infection or something like that. I'm so sorry about that. But I need to be able to do that. You need to trust and you need to defer to me in those moments. So there's just not an option aside from that.
I met a lady once when I was out walking, and she had a little tiny white dog, and the dog's eyes were crusty. You know, sometimes little dogs' eyes run, and it gets caught in their fur. Well, it was the size of marbles. Like the chunks of goo in the corner of the dog's eyes was like, I had to comment on it. I had to say I can't remember what I said, but I was so shocked to see that. And she's like, oh, well, he won't let us anywhere near his eyes. And I thought, I can't imagine walking around with all that caked on my eyes. That poor dog.
Oh, that's not good. Well, and this is the thing, like the dog's probably uncomfortable with hands being around its eyes and it's not giving consent. So now this person cannot help their dog.
Right.
Because they can't get consent from the dog. Like that it makes no sense to me.
Yes. I don't know how they were going to deal with that. They would have to sedate the dog at the vet, and because it was beyond just picking off. Like it's probably welded to the dog's skin. Like,
yeah. Actually, when I was picking Ned up, there was somebody else in the vet clinic and they were paying their bill and we were waiting off to the side to pay our bill and getting some final instructions from the vet tech. And the man was there because he was getting a prescription for tramadol, which is a pain reliever, but it's also used sometimes as a mild sedative. And the tramadol was to sedate the dog en route to the vet clinic so they could trim the dog's nails.
Oh, wow.
So, and like this is probably something that has been conditioned for the dog to freak out when they have their nails trimmed. So now they get to the point where they need to be sedated just to have a nail trim. And, you know, like that, the sedation is not without its dangers. You know, having to put dogs under to perform any sort of procedure is not without its dangers. The expense of that is huge. Like there's so many reasons that spending some time with your dogs when they're young, helping to condition these things and reaching out for help if you're struggling with it, you know, finding a professional. Don't turn to the Facebook armchair experts because you get terrible advice like, oh, just don't trim them. He doesn't like it.
Or just take them for more walks. Those nails will wear down.
Yeah, we need to be able to do what we need to do with our dogs. So absolutely 100%, I can guarantee you that Ned would not have given me consent in that situation if he did not have the training under his belt, the understanding that I was going to keep him safe, that he could trust me, and also the understanding that he had to allow me to handle him because we've worked through this. You know, he understands based on his previous life, based on everything that led up to this moment, that he's never gotten away with saying, don't touch my ear, bug off. Like that just, it's not an option for him. And I won't get into methods and things where we spend, you know, 99% of the time building it up and making it very positive, and maybe about 1% of the time saying, you must, you have no option. This is absolutely a must. If you want help with any of these things, we can help you with these things. Join us in our online training programs or our in-person programs, and we can help get you on the right track with your dog. You know, check out our YouTube channel. We have 900 videos that are helping you do some wonderful things with your dogs. And we talk all about this with puppies, handling being so important. So it's such a crucial element, and it just fans my passion and my flames even greater to spread the word that this is absolutely necessary. And things like asking for consent, like, you know what, actually, I mean, I'm going to stop on this for a second and talk about the consent thing, because I do ask for consent at the beginning of whatever it is that I'm doing. But if I don't get the consent, so basically when we do nails every week, I trim nails every single week. I Dremel now. And I pop my dogs up on the grooming table for that. And I ask for their first paw by putting out my hand. And they always put their paw in my hand because they don't mind at all. And they actually like being handled and getting groomed because they know it brings good things. They're conditioned to enjoy it. So when times are good, they enjoy it. And when times are stressful, they tolerate it, which is exactly what I need. So I will put my hand out. 9 times out of 10, they put their paw in my hand. If they didn't, I would just reach for their paw. I would just pick it up. So if they put their paw in my hand and give me consent, quote unquote, I might say yes and give them a cookie for that right off the bat. I randomly reinforce that, of course, to let them know that this is a good thing. Great. I'm glad that you're giving me consent and offering me your paw and being a willing participant in this situation. But if you didn't, if I put my hand out and didn't get the consent by the paw going in my hand, I would simply slide my hand down his leg, pick up his paw, and go forward with nail trimming or dremeling, and he just wouldn't get the cookie for that.
Right.
Because he didn't do it. But he still doesn't have the option of saying, no, you can't.
Right.
So I think that's a really, really crucial message. Like, yeah, we can have them be a willing participant, and that's great. But in the end, I need to trim his toenails. He needs to have healthy feet. He needs to not be, you know, have nails that are so long that they're actually changing the form of his foot.
Right. Yes.
Which was unfortunately the case with the dog that I was just talking about in the vet clinic, because every time they came for a nail trim, it was such a fiasco that it didn't get done as often as it needed to. And so, all right. Crates,
yes.
Crates.
Yes.
You brought that one up, and I have that one on my list as a huge part of this. So talk about crates for a second.
Well, if your dog requires medical attention when they're at the vet clinic, the vet doesn't just let them free roam around the clinic. They're in a crate at the vet clinic. They usually have a wall of cages with different sizes, and that's where your animal goes. You know, they're already stressed enough being at the vet. If they've never been in a crate before, or they've been allowed to come out the moment they cry, that's going to create even more stress.
Absolutely.
I know when Honda or any of my dogs have gone to the vet and they get put in that crate, they go, oh, I recognize this.
Yeah.
This is just a place to relax.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will tell you, anybody who will give you the well-intentioned advice of letting the puppy out if they're crying, or don't crate the puppy because crating is cruel, or we have great guilt ourselves and we give in. It is to your dog's detriment to give in and not persevere with crate training. That having the option of crating him, first off, at the clinic, when I passed him off to the vet tech after we had done the diagnostics and it had come back and it was so obvious what we needed to do. We needed to neuter so that the fuel that was blowing up the prostate, the testosterone, could be taken out of the situation. And I think probably 99 times out of 100 with this situation, which is actually a fairly common situation for dogs, for male dogs that are intact, that get themselves worked up and don't necessarily have an outlet for that. It ends up just sucking the testosterone right out. The prostate normalizes. And of course, then the bladder's not blocked and the poop's not blocked and everything's not crammed in there. And life returns to normal. So at the end of the month, I'm going to repeat the urinalysis and make sure that all of everything is hunky-dory as it should be. I haven't decided yet if I'm going to repeat the x-ray. I think I'll look for information on what the urinalysis gives me first and then decide about the x-ray from there. It's not really about the cost, but it's more about, exposure to radiation and whatnot. I try to minimize that as much as possible. But having said that, it's very worthwhile and it's a very quick exposure to radiation. So it's worthwhile if you need to see those rads. But I want to make sure that everything is where it should be. But back to the crate. So when I said to the vet tech, he's very well crate trained, so he'll be fine in there. She immediately looked at me and said, "Oh, thank goodness! I'm so appreciative when dogs are crate trained. They're so stressed without." And off she went into the back. And I thought, yeah, I know this.
Yes.
Like this is another thing that I'm so grateful to past Shannon in this moment for. That my dogs are well accustomed to being in the crate. And then later on, when the vet called to give me a report on him, she said, he's resting really comfortably in the crate. He's not been stressed at all. Even before he went in for surgery, he was resting back there and he was relaxed and not happy because he was in pain, but he was relaxed and chill and all was good. And
so much better for him. Yes.
Yeah. I thought the people who would make you feel bad for trying to crate your dog and trying to persevere with that. And I say that honestly, because we get so many students who say I don't know how to answer the people who are telling me that I shouldn't persevere with this crate training and that it's cruel and this, that, and the other. You tell those people to go and talk to any veterinarian or any vet tech.
I remember one time when I was at the emergency hospital, I remember I was holding a cat and they were putting a catheter in the cat while I was holding it. But in the meantime, about 10 feet away, there was a dog in one of our crates that would not stop barking. And you could see the vet was, trying to get this catheter in the cat. The cat is freaking out because there's a dog barking. And, it just created a horrible situation, a horrible, stressful situation that this dog was not accepting that crate. And it was detrimental to the staff. It was detrimental to the other animals.
And potentially detrimental to that dog because why was the dog in? Do you remember?
I can't remember why that dog was in there.
It could have been not feeling great, still had enough energy to bark, but that's taking energy out of a dog that's potentially already sick.
Right, yes.
Or that dog barking, stressing out the other dogs that are recovering and need their rest. There's so many things
and imagine when you're in the hospital and you're recovering from a surgery, if there's somebody beside you like, ba, 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 you're going to go nuts.
Probably.
And I did feel nuts
that a
sometimes.
Song? I thought you were going to be like, ba, ba, baran.
No, I'd like that. I would join in. But no, there's quite a few times in the vet clinic I thought I might have to pull my hair out because of an animal that was back there and just would not be quiet.
Yeah. So, even if you don't crate your dog in day-to-day life, I think it is still worthwhile to, set aside an hour or two a week to just pop them in there. You can give them something to occupy them and just let them continue to be accustomed to that crate.
Right, yes.
My own dogs are never crated at home anymore, except for after surgeries.
Right, yeah.
They're never crated at home anymore, but they're crated at work and they're crated in the car. So they're very accustomed to being in the crate, and it serves so well as it did in this incident. So crating, of course, after the fact as well, when I brought Ned home, so I was able to pick him up that night, luckily, which was nice because it was really, really hard to not have him in the house. So I was able to pick him up and I brought him home and he was still dopey from the anesthetic. And I thought, I'll just hang out and see if he relaxes and see if he lies down on his own and chills out. I've had dogs who have fought the anesthetic before and refused to lie down and relax. And he was better about lying down to relax, but you could tell he wasn't comfortable. So he kept getting up and readjusting. And then he would get up and come over to the couch and look at me. Those sad eyes. Can I please come up? And of course I was off.
Right. You could fall easily. Coming out of anesthesia. Yes.
Yeah. And I don't want him stretching his back at all.
Yes.
So then I thought, you know what, Shannon, this is for you. You keeping him out of the crate right now, that's making you feel better, but it's not what's right for the dog.
Right.
It's not what's right for Ned in this moment. He doesn't need to be getting up and moving around. He needs to be resting. So I said, stop feeling the guilt because he's in this dire situation. Put him in the crate and he will relax in the crate.
Yes.
So
like if it was a child, you would have insisted the child stayed in bed.
Exactly.
Yes. So same with our dog. You know what? I insist that you stay in here so you can mend.
Precisely. So I put him in the crate and he went to sleep. And then I let him out to have a pee just before bed. He went out and he had a quick little pee. And then we came back inside and I put him back in the crate for the night. And it's been a long time since he slept in the crate overnight, but it was the right thing to do. Because again, I started feeling bad, like, oh, he's not used to sleeping in the crate overnight. No, he's already in such a bad spot. And I just want to like snuggle and be with him. And I thought, Shannon, this is not about you.
Right.
This is not about your emotional state and feeling sad for this dog and feeling guilty or whatever. This is not about you. This is about what's right for the dog. And like, what's right isn't always what's easy.
Exactly.
But it's important to do what's right. And it was about Ned in that moment. So he slept in the crate overnight. And you know what? We both survived it. We're both here to tell the tale after the fact.
Yes.
So he slept in the crate. All was well. As soon as he went into the crate, the energy just drained right out of him and he went to sleep because that's the condition that gets created by the crate.
Right,
You know, they get used to going in and relaxing. And then that becomes the normal state for them. Their whole mental state just goes right into relaxation mode when they're well crate trained. So
did you play any of the McCann Dog's music channel to help him relax?
I didn't, but I didn't even think of that, but I should have. He didn't need it.
Right. Yeah.
But it would be a good idea if he had needed it. And our puppies, if he was a puppy, I probably would have. I probably would have had more things in place to help him relax. But because he's 6.5, he's already really conditioned to going into the crate and chilling. I really didn't need to, but that's a good thought. Good thought for sure. The McCann Dogs music channel, we're having all sorts of great success with that, with young puppies getting accustomed to being alone in the crate, et cetera, as well. So
I find it quite relaxing too.
Yeah.
Yes. Remember we had one of our students sent a photo of a newborn baby and the
with
dog.
Mr. Bumbles.
Yeah, both sleeping to the McCann Dogs music channel. So I think it must have an effect on children too.
Yeah, absolutely. Just relaxed baby, relaxed dog. That was a great image. I really liked that. So yeah, I mean that was the first night, and then the rest of the time it was just about keeping him quiet and a little bit lower key, and of course, after a day and a half, he was feeling pretty good and wanting to run the races. And of course, we're always tempted as humans to be like, oh, look, they're fine.
He's better.
He's fine. I don't know why the vet said 7 to 10 days. But again, it's not about me. It's about the dog and it's about what's right for the dog. So luckily 10 days was up yesterday. So he's sprung.
Has it been that long?
Point. It has been that long.
I feel like it just happened.
It was last week on Monday that he got neutered, and now it's Friday of the following week. So yeah. And he just finished his last antibiotic yesterday. So we're good. We're, his incision has healed beautifully. His stitches are dissolving. So that's all great. But that period of time, I did have to keep him quiet. And that was tough because after a day and a half, he was like, okay, Mom, I'm ready to take on the world again.
Yep.
Let's do this thing. Like, let's go train. Let's go run around the property. Let's go do all the things that we normally do. And of course, I had to be the big heavy and the adult and say, no, you are going to go back in your crate and relax. And rest, he spent a lot of time in his crate over that first week, especially because, again, his natural inclination, now that he's not in pain anymore, is to be Ned, be regular old Ned.
Right.
And as much as he looked like he was ready to take on the world, he's just had surgery. So he's going to hide any sort of discomfort at this point. And I'm already well aware now after this incident that he's good at that.
Yes.
So I needed to be the adult. We did a lot of the enrichments from column, I can't remember in the document if it's enrichments from column A or the ones that I have a document. I'll actually link it in the show notes below. It's called the Truth About Enrichments and How They Should Be Used Properly. And there's some enrichments that we want to use in our regular day-to-day life with our dogs that work to our advantage. And then there's a whole bunch of enrichments that get suggested that while we can use them, we want to use them sparingly because they don't involve us and they mean that the dog gets all sorts of rewards and reinforcements without our involvement being there, which creates very self-serving dogs, which they already are by nature to begin with. So we want to nurture the relationship as much as possible. And the enrichments from column B don't nurture the relationship at all. They don't train with the dog. They don't teach the dog. They fulfill the dog in certain ways, but it's sort of like putting the child in front of the video game. You know, yes, it passes time and it's fulfilling in certain ways, but what is the benefit? And is there a true benefit to this? So a lot of the enrichments from column B are the things that we use when we don't necessarily care about impacting the relationship.
Should you tell some of them since people aren't looking at that document right now?
You bet. So I'm going to link it in the show notes below so you'll have a little bit more information. But things like the snuffle mats, things like just silly games in the house that allow the dog to get a little bit of energy out. So a snuffle mat is basically like if you pictured a shag rug and then you pictured putting a whole bunch of kibble or treats or whatever in the shag rug for the dog to sniff around and search. Or, you know, there's various versions of this. People might put like 80 toilet paper rolls in a little kiddie pool and then dump a bunch of kibbles in there and the dogs just have to search through the toilet paper rolls as an example. So I don't know who has 80 toilet paper rolls, but
that's some saving up.
Maybe like the Sky Dome washrooms.
Right. Yes.
Yeah. The caretakers at the Sky Dome.
It would take a while to get that many at my house.
Paper rolls. Toilet paper rolls.
Yes.
So I also would put cookies in. I have those big the big Kong extreme bones, and they're very much like a Kong material, but you can squeeze them open, put cookies in them. I'll tell you, my fingers were sore from trying to squeeze those things open. Yeah. So I'd make him some stuffed Kongs. I'd make him some of those bone Kongs. We did some silly scenting games where I would like hide a piece of kibble in the living room somewhere and then I'd tell him to go and find it. Like just fun things like that are going to take some of his energy out. Definitely not anything that would create the need to expend a lot of energy because again, even though he's got the energy and I want to alleviate some of that energy for him because I don't want him to feel pent up, he also needs to be sending all that energy to his healing places.
Right. Yes.
He doesn't need to be using all his energy by playing and running and you know, potentially damaging the incisions or anything like that, and then being exhausted and his body doesn't have enough fuel to heal him. I mean, he's a healthy young dog, so that's probably a stretch. But realistically, when you have an animal that's recovering, they should be resting. And a lot of times people will ask us, like, how do I keep this dog busy? And you really need to make sure that it's very low-key activity.
Right. Think of when we're recovering from a surgery, like I'll lay in bed and I'll do crossword puzzles or word searches. You know, that's what I'll read a book, but our dogs can't do these little things. So we need to help find little things like that that expend some mental energy, but aren't harming them. Exactly.
Oh my goodness. Precisely. For his aftercare thing, so with the enrichments and whatnot, he survived the week. He's going to be happy to get back to being a normal dog, running and playing and having some fun. We are going to get back to that slowly, though. The last thing I want to do is, after 10 days of not doing anything, now go out and start like throwing 8 million toys or really having him run and exercise. They tend to lose muscle tone quite quickly. I mean, we all do. We do too. But in dogs, I've already noticed that he's lost some muscle tone just from being on rest for 10 days. So I'm going to slowly work him back up to things. The trick that I had that I thought was the most beneficial for this. So if you're planning on a spay or a neuter, you might teach your dog what I call cockroach. So it's basically, it's the dead dog trick. Right. Yeah. But I don't know. I don't like shooting my dog. It just feels weird to me. It does feel weird. Yeah. I've nicknamed it cockroach. And when I say cockroach, Ned will roll on his back and stick all 4 of his feet up in the air. Why did you choose cockroach? Well, because you think of a cockroach that's dead on their back and they can't get up. Oh, that's true. Yeah. I don't really know. I've been asked that before. Or like a turtle on his back. There you go. I should have used turtle. That would make more sense. Oh, cockroach is definitely original.
Definitely.
I've been asked that before, and I thought it'd be self-explanatory, but I guess not. Anyways, so yeah, I have that cockroach trick that I was able to say cockroach and have him roll over and show me his incision.
Right.
You know, once he had sort of gotten over the first day and a half of healing.
And another good thing you did
was
was you took photos of it.
Yeah, that's a good one to
you
bring
knew
up.
what you knew what it looked like the day before.
Yes. Yeah, this is a really good tip. And actually, that tip was from Denise, our old office manager who used to work
she's
at
not
McCann's.
that old.
No, well, previous. You're right. That's a bad phrase. Our previous office manager. Sorry, Denise. Our previous office manager, she had given me that tip, or she did that with one of her dogs, and I thought that's brilliant. That's so smart.
Yes.
So I took a picture of the incision pretty much a day and a half after the surgery. So it was still pink and bright, and I could see what it looked like. I could see what was happening with his scrotal sac as well, because I needed to keep an eye on that and make sure that was shrinking up and the blood flow wasn't cut off to that and whatnot. So there were certain things that I just wanted to make sure everything was healing as it should. So I had that picture to compare from day 2, day 3, maybe, all the way through day 10. So I didn't take a new picture every day because I didn't think I needed that, but just having that picture so that I could then look at the incision and go, yep, it looks better than it did there. Yeah, it still looks better than it did there.
Right.
And I could tell there was no backsliding. Yes. So of course the vets and the vet techs are great, and they give you all sorts of information about watch for this, watch for this, watch for this, watch for this. But a lot of the times there's so much going on and our brains are stressed, like I can still feel the stress from this in my body, and it's been 10 days now. So like the stress in that moment and in the immediate days following is pretty big.
Right. Yep.
So having concrete proof keeps you from going, I don't remember if was that like that before?
Yes.
Was that like
Yeah. And if you have a question too, you could have emailed that photo to the vet and said, what do you think of this?
Yeah.
Yes,
exactly.
rather than having to haul him back in.
Yeah, absolutely. And nowadays with our technology and whatnot, I ask them to send me the x-ray so that I have that copy. I ask them to, I always try to get copies of everything that I do at my vet clinics so that I just have the information should I ever need it, Like I said, I had my old vet records transferred to the new vet clinic, but who knows, like something could get lost in transit and there could be something that I want. So generally I try to keep everything organized. I have a file on my computer that has each of my dogs' names, and then I just put all their stuff in that. And for the most part, it just accumulates. Like I probably still have Jaden's and Tyler's, and they've been gone since 2015, the two of them. I probably still have Quincy's, and she's been gone since 2009. So
sometimes it's just interesting to look back.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. But it's good information to have. And it also gives me information that Jaden, for example, I have a huge file in Jaden's because he started having seizures at around 5 years of age. And he had, I won't really get into a ton of the details, but I kept a journal. He didn't have enough that I needed to medicate him, and I was reluctant to medicate him because if I medicated and suppressed him, then I wouldn't know how many he was having, etc. He would have maybe one a month. They weren't happening a lot. They weren't happening as clusters. He would come out of them okay. They were grand mal seizures, but he would come out of them okay. His postictal was short, and it was relatively easy to deal with. My heart goes out to people who have these really dramatic, awful postictal periods after seizures, and their dogs become aggressive and terrified, and I was very lucky in that he did not have any of that. And after a period of time, after a couple of years, I had kept this journal and I had noted every detail surrounding any seizures that he had. And I did blood work after a lot of them. Right away I would rush into the vet and get blood work to see if there was anything that stood out and compare those to his baseline values and whatnot. But I was able to figure out, drawing conclusions, that after a couple of years, this was the cause of these seizures. And I don't want to talk about why, because everybody's medical cases are different. And of course, we are not vets and we are not qualified to give medical advice. So I'm gonna keep the nitty-gritty details to myself here. But once I recognized what the trigger was, then I was able to stop exposing him to that trigger. And he was, I think, 8 years seizure free at the time that he passed away at 14, and lived a really, really great life right up until 14 years of age after we got to that, seizure free point. Right. So, and my life got better too, because that was really stressful. That's a hard thing to watch. Oh my God. My gosh. And my heart really goes out to people who have to deal with a lot of that, or cluster seizures, or have to use Valium to pull their dogs out of the seizures. Oh, it's just awful. Yes. Awful, awful stuff. But luckily Jaden never knew the difference. He was always like, what why are you looking so stressed? Why are we sitting on the floor? What's going on? He would just wake up and go, hey, what's up? Oh my goodness. All right. Well, that was a doozy of an episode. I want to thank you all for listening to that story. And I hope there was some good gems to pull out of it. I mean, I know I always try to learn with everything and try to take away something with everything that happens. So once the stress started to calm a little bit, I started thinking about the takeaways. And of course, you know, the stress starts to calm and the disappointments start to come out as well. So I'm trying to focus on the takeaways, and I'm trying to focus on the gratitude for the good things, the fact that I was able to easily help him, the fact that the vet was able to help him, like the fact that we were able to help him in that situation was just gold. And, you know, there's nothing ever that's going to beat that. So I'm so grateful, and I'm fired up again to be spreading the good word about how important these things are and how important training and communication and all of that is. So anything you wanted to shoot out there to conclude?
Well, I'm so glad that Ned's going to be okay.
Thank you.
That's
Me too.
Yes.
Me
When you
too.
texted me, it was like, no. And then, and then,
the nerd goes on.
Yes.
Oh, thank goodness.
Yes.
Well, on that note, I'm Instructor Shannon.
Instructor Swanny.
Happy training.
The McCann Dogs podcast is brought to you by McCann Professional Dog Trainers. We help dog owners to have a well-behaved, four-legged family member. Please give us a call at 905-659-1888 or visit us at mccanndogs.com. Happy training!